Hey, everybody. Welcome to the From Trauma to Joy podcast. I'm Mike McNamara, the host. I do this with a couple friends of mine, Tim Lynch and Wade Cates, so they'll join me here in a minute. And in this week's segment, we're going to kind of do a deep dive on the questions and comments that you guys sent in about the first episode, which is there is a path from trauma to joy, and you can walk it. I think you'll find it really interesting because the questions and comments are interesting, and we'll go ahead and go down those rabbit holes with everybody. So sit back, relax, as Wade, Tim, and I bring conversations that normally happen very much in private, in the office of therapist, very privately, because these are intensely private issues, right? Well, we want to bring them into the town square because trauma is a normal part of life. Okay, we just don't know that. Okay, and the secret to doing it well is to learn about it, to get wiser about it, and that will create a strength so that you can transform your life and then transform the lives of those around you. So, as always, any questions or comments, send them via whatever platform you're watching on. Okay, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, any of those, right? We'll just send a comment and it'll come to me. So, without further ado, let's do this. All right. The way I want to do this is I got emails and comments from people about episode 1. So what I'd like to do is I'd like us to talk about that, and before we press on to episode 2. And just so everybody knows, what we're going to talk about today is in episode 2 is if you talk to people that have gone through either sat through my public presentation or gone through the seminar, if you ask them, what's the most powerful thing that you heard? There is one overwhelming answer, and that is, when I heard you're never going to get over it, that rocked me. Okay. And but in a good way. Okay. Which sounds odd when you hear that piece of advice. And so I want us to dig in on that, and we'll do that here. But before we do that, I want to get to emails about episode 1, and you guys can comment on this. The first email I got was, it made me laugh when I heard one of you talk about the frustration of nothing work. And again, and we're all doing this alone. And I'll go through 5 of them, and then you guys can pick out and talk about whatever you want to. Second email, the importance of a Dan Combs figure in your life. Mac, that Marine was Dan Combs to you. You were Dan Combs to Timmy, and Dan Combs was Dan Combs to Wade. But that trusted person, to use a phrase Mac uses, in the inner sanctum of your life, who you know would never steer you away from the truth. The next thing, something that Timmy said. Timmy's quote, the humiliation of being the most screwed up person in the group. I thought that was absolutely amazing because it said what I feel, but would never say out loud. And then as you guys go on and talk, you don't really know how screwed up everybody else is because everybody keeps it to themselves. That actually made me laugh. All right. And number 5 in this group is, this struggle is a normal part of life. Wow. Never thought of it like that. Wade?
Oh, geez. All of them hit home. All of them are right on the mark. The importance of Dan Combs is yeah. How do you can't measure that. It's that trusted friend who has either been through something or knows something, and it just says, "Hey, you know, I see what you're going through. maybe this will help, or this person can help, and and that opens the door to credibility, right? Because there's so many people in this space that sell you hopium and copium. It's just fluff and stuff. It doesn't mean anything. It's well-meaning, but it's not applicable to the real world. It may make a good refrigerator magnet. It may make a good meme on Facebook, but when the rubber hits the road, it's just vapor in the wind. So you need something, someone to point you to something solid, and that you never get over it. To me, is the gateway.
The Timmy, any of those five you would care to comment on? You want to comment on them all? What
Well, the being frustrating that nothing seems to work, and when you start going down that rabbit hole, it's almost amazing that anybody would expect things to work. You cannot measure serotonin in the brain, and serotonin levels across the various regions of the brains vary, as does the way that you metabolize it. So when you're prescribed SSRIs or any of these other medications, it's a crapshoot. The doctors have no idea what your baseline is. They have no idea how this is going to impact you. They supposedly do this by sophisticated observation and self-reporting by patients. And I can tell you, having been a former patient, there's nothing less reliable than our self-reporting. So that and the examples that I articulated in our first episode from the various collective wisdom of PhDs, when what they're talking about seems to me to be word salads, it's frustrating because you don't understand what it is they are trying to say. It sounds like a lot of new age mysticism, and when you're significantly concerned about why things are so difficult for you and why you seem to be so screwed up, those that type of word salad therapy is not helpful. So I'm not I'm not surprised that people glom onto that. The real question is, how would you expect any of this to work, given our limited knowledge of how the human brain works?
Yeah, but
And
we don't. But again, we don't know that though. And that to me
Mhm.
is why the frustration. The first email about about the frustration that people feel is so important, if you will, and
Mhm.
because again, we're ignorant. We believe these people know what they're talking about, and I'm going to show you. In fact, I'll do it right now because it just popped up. I'm going to show you a slide about suicide in the active duty military. And also, the other thing I want you to know is um, the nation set a suicide record in 2022. Okay, now I'm going to show you if I can make this work. I think I can. It's a PowerPoint. Uh, it's a PowerPoint slide that, and I had to, and just so this data is not depicted like this. Okay, and so I had to create this slide. Now, what this slide is suicide, starting at the small end, 1999. And that's in the American military, the active duty force in the American military. Look at that line. It was 150. If you get really close to your screen, you could probably see that. Okay. And then, you can see the arc of it. And throughout the life of that, we've embraced the ideas of the mental health industrial complex. And that is, we're going to give you these serotonin blockers and you're going to come to therapy. And look at that. All we do, and think about this, there's billions of dollars dumped into that. Okay. And I would tell you this, that the arc for civilian suicide, I haven't plotted that, but it will track a similar line. We dump money into the system. We go thinking it's the right thing to do, and all we get is more suicide. Okay, so the reason I show this stuff, and you can see how stark it is, right? Suicide in the American military is on the verge of tripling relative to 1999, and the force is the same size. Okay. And so what I want you to do is I want you to approach the mental health system with great caution. Okay. Because I called both Wade and Timmy yesterday, and we were having this discussion and I about your brain is such a complex tool. People want to sell you that, oh, this and this and this means this. Well, if they were right, that graph I just showed you would not look like it. Okay? The MRI gets, and you can read the book, The Body Keeps a Score, and the MRI gets invented. So now we can see into your brain. We get all your blood tests and we can see where everything is. So now all we got to do is get the chemicals right? And this stuff is going to be cured. It's going to be a thing of the past. Well, guess what? It doesn't work like that. We have more people involved in the mental health business. We have more people on drugs than we've ever had in our life, right? In the history of the nation. Okay, and so my point to you as a prudent human being is if you look at this set of data, this is more art than science. Them telling you that this is science is bullshit, okay? Because if it was science, the data would not look like the data looks. So my admonition to everybody, before you look anyplace else, listen to this stuff. Look inside of you. Make sure what you're basing your life decisions on, your mental fitness, is based in the truth, not somebody selling you hopium, not somebody's bullshit diagnosis of whatever they see about you. Take it all with a grain of salt and go there slowly, okay? And that's why the first answer that you should look for is inside of you, and that's what we teach. So with that, I'll get off my soapbox. But I've been doing this for 10 years now, and I watch that graph get bigger almost every year. And if it goes down, it goes down slightly, and then it'll tick back up. Okay, and so it's not supposed to be that way if they know what the fuck they're talking about. And so everything that collides inside of your brain is a pretty complex endeavor. For them to reduce it to certain variables and say, oh, take this med and this will make you better is bullshit. And the data proves that. Okay. The data proves that. And so if this was a results-based business, they'd be out of business because somebody who was paid on success would look at them and say, this is not working. So you guys are all fired. I'm not going to pay this shit. And then the reply to that is, oh, well, it would be much worse without us. Okay, I guess. All right. But what you're doing clearly is not being effective if this keeps getting worse. All right. So, and that goes back to the frustration of nothing works. Well, I'll tell you what fucking works. The truth works, right? You becoming wiser works. You becoming stronger works, right? You becoming more self-disciplined. All that fucking works. And it's all anchored in the truth. No hopium in there. And so to me, when you approach the mental health industry, take it all with a grain of salt, man, because the data that sits behind everything they do. And again, that slide I showed you, this one right here, I had to make that because they sure as fuck don't publish that data like that. It's all in statistical gobbledygook. It's X percent per 1,000, and it might go up. But you don't see it like this. If you see it like this, your reaction would be my reaction. Holy fuck, man. What are we doing? So, the frustration of nothing works. Go there slowly.
It's not just the data; it's the proper interpretation of data as well. It's not trying to shade the data. It's what does this actually show you? It's like they speak like you said in gobbledygook. I remember we did a dog and pony show one time for some investors on a project, and we were supposed to load everybody on a plane and take them somewhere. And we had a little mechanical failure, and some young guy got on the microphone and announced to the VIPs that we had a pneumatic failure in our circular momentum device, and it was going to take a few minutes to fix. And everybody was impressed. What did it mean? We had a flat tire on the plane. But they say it in ways that are supposed to be over your head. They hide the data in academies, that most people don't speak. I mean, they may not be telling a lie, but they're speaking a language that only they speak and selling it to the public as is this panacea that we're fixing this and this is how. But in reality, when you look at the numbers, it's just a flat tire. People are killing themselves at a higher number because we're not addressing the real problem.
Well, and again, how did I build this slide? I had to go into every annual report and extract the number. That's how I had to build this slide because it ain't displayed like this. And people have seen it, right? And they come up to me and it's like, where did you get that? I've never seen anything like that displays our lack of progress. And I said, I had to build it because they don't display the data like that. And and that's just to validate,
Yeah, and
Wade's point that it's academies, right?
one of the wisest descriptions of statistics I've ever heard was statistics is like a bikini. What it reveals is interesting, but what it conceals is vital. So you got to see what are they shading behind the statistics.
And I just wanted to correct you, not to be pedantic, but as I was doing our annual, our twice yearly newsletter for the Bar X Project, I noted that $70 billion later at the VA, suicides in 2023 went down to 17.3 per day from 17.4 today a day. So it's not like $70 billion doesn't buy you anything. It buys you point something of a, which of course is me pointing out what you're saying is absolutely true. You can say it went down, but 17.3 from 17.4, that's not
Still
going
statistically
down.
zero. Yeah.
Yeah, it's statistic. It's exactly right. But that was trumpeted as good news in the, what was it? I guess this was the 2025 VA's annual report
Well,
on
and
suicides.
again, um, my undergraduate degree is in economics, and which is applied mathematics. And I don't. The reason I got a degree in economics is because I didn't realize it was applied mathematics soon enough, and I knew my mom wouldn't let me change majors and stay in school another year, so I had to gut it out. But look at the footnotes. Look at the footnotes in those reports. California doesn't report. North Carolina, Texas don't report, right? And so these are huge veteran states, right? And you go start down like where don't so the number is 17.4 except and then you go down again. I never read a footnote in my life, right? Until I started reading history and doing my decision making class and being a serious student of military history. Then I started reading footnotes. And then I found it's all in the footnotes, man. If you're not reading footnotes, you're a rube, man. You're a fool. And then you start putting the data together. And you say, so 17.4 isn't the real number. No, it's the best number that we can come up with, right? And so let me read you a few more of these. Hopium got rave reviews. A lot of people have never heard that word. And obviously, somebody else sent an email quoting Wade, the only way for me to heal is to make my pain go away. And that means to erase the memories. I can never do that. And then the whole idea
Mm.
of sweet and sour. Um, Interesting, Mac. The national protocol, prescription meds and therapy. It just doesn't work. I know I'm a product of the system. From Timmy, financial problems make all of this stuff worse. I don't think I can overestimate how difficult my traumatic experiences were because I was struggling financially and then financially things got worse. And like you guys talk about, I did it all very privately. I wish I would have heard this back then. It would have been a much easier path for me. Um, Quoting Mac, that would be me. Um, why is the truth so important? Because it's strong, it's unbendable. You can build on it. Somebody else wrote about, I've never thought of this stuff as a basic life skill, but that's exactly what it is. You guys are right. This happens to everybody, but nobody teaches us anything about this. It was actually pretty amazing as I commuted home listening to you guys. Next, the mental health industrial complex. I like that. Next, when I heard that you taught this to first graders, Mac, I was like, oh my God, how could he do this? And then as you tick down just those three incidents, how many of how many of you have who have parents that don't live together? How many of you have lost a pet or somebody in your family? I knew what you said was true. We have an obligation to share this with our children because life will get them. But it was amazing to hear about your experience in Weed, California. Somebody else talked about Wade's sailing analogy. Somebody else quoted me talking about, I never thought myself as a more fragile version of me, but in fact, that's what I am. Holy shit. This is one that I think that, we should talk about. And something Wade said, you have the right to your emotions. And then, but we've had discussions about what's an emotion. An emotion is an involuntary response. Okay. There's other things that come out of us that are considered reactions. In my opinion, that's not an emotion. That's a feeling that you act on. It might come out of an emotion, but that's not the emotion. And I think understanding that emotions or involuntary responses are important. Somebody else wrote, the normalization of these discussions, you guys bringing this stuff into the town square and just talking about it like normal people, I've never seen anything like that. The only therapy I did was very private, and I've never spoken about it. This is really cool stuff. Nice going. And then somebody made a comment about the Nietzsche quote. And they said, Nietzsche went mad? I didn't know that. Yeah, he straight up lost his mind. That's why his quote, that's why I would tweak his quote, right? It's a little dark for me. And so, anyway, um, how about it? Any of those things that stand out more than anything else?
For me, the emotions thing is one of my soapbox issues. I have several, but the emotions thing is it. And I don't remember if I said this in the last podcast, but the phrase "you will never get over it," spoken to a traumatized or grief-stricken person, they instinctively know it's true. The societal message and the thing you kind of hear all around you is time heals all wounds. And like I said, my son was 6 foot, 6'1", very athletic, but he's reduced to 5 pounds of ash in an urn beside me as I stand at the head of the auditorium, and people come by and talk to me. If someone says you will eventually get over this, that's when you know it's a lie. And to suppress involuntary reactions and deny their viability or their reality only makes you manic. You can do it for a short time, but you can't do it forever. That box that you're stuffing those things in will eventually explode. So you have a right to sadness, to happiness, to joy, to anger, to all those things that happen to you. And sometimes they happen all at once or in very rapid succession. It's not a one and done. You're on a carousel and you're going to go round and round and round for the rest of your
And
life.
again, I think they're involuntary responses. I told the story about Steve Combs in episode 1, where he feels relief after the police tell his wife, and then his wife calls him, that his son has passed away. His son was in and out of jail. He struggled with addiction. And I know he loved his son more than anything. And just like Wade talked about, I'd trade places with him in a second. Okay. But that emotion of relief, right? That's an emotion. It's an involuntary, and that's what people need to understand. They're involuntary responses, and you can't shut them off. You're gonna have them, right?
Yes.
And it causes people great frustration when they have those emotions. And it's like you've got to learn how to surf that. Wade talks about sailing that, you got to learn how to surf in the valley of the shadow of death. That emotion's gonna come and you're gonna go, why am I feeling this? But just know that it's an uncontrolled response. When you learn how, as I said before, when you learn how to control your emotions and dictate them, let me know so I can teach other people. But people think that there's something wrong with them because they feel these things, right? And Wade's so good at talking about, having the right to your emotions and accepting them for what they are.
It's the I don't know if we've talked about it yet on this, but the Billy Bob Thornton video of his brother talking about how there's melancholy now. There's no way to get away from it. And just a couple of weeks ago, my nephew got married, and we were at the wedding, we were at the reception, and there was ebb and flow of emotions, but the mother-son dance was the hardest to watch. And my wife is sitting beside, I'm standing up, she's sitting down, and we're watching the mother-son dance, and that sadness hit that we never get that. My wife is never going to dance at my son's wedding, and if I had tried to suppress that emotion, I think I'd have lost it. I don't think I'd have been able to handle it. But when you accept it, you can be happy.
Wait a minute.
Sad
What do you mean suppress it? It's there. Okay, so it's there.
Yeah.
Like, what do you? Hey,
Well, no. The point
there's
being
no way
is if I
to
try,
suppress it, right? It's
yeah,
fucking there. But wait, that's what we think that we could think we could suppress it, or we can not feel it, or some other, and it's bullshit, right?
it's impossible. Yeah. So just accepting that. Okay, that this is sad, but it's beautiful at the same time. And I was able to stand there and watch that dance and be happy and sad at the same
And that's the whole sweet and sour thing.
time.
And
Sweet and sour chicken, man.
yeah, and I use Timmy as an example. Timmy on the first podcast talked about he was going to come see all of his friends who he hadn't seen in years, and he was so scared that they would know that he was a failure and that they would judge him. And he's throwing up in airports flying from Texas to North Carolina, right? And that humiliation is an emotion, right? It's an uncontrollable, no matter what your brain is saying, you're feeling this thing. And so those are your emotions. And so to me, we have to learn how to accept those emotions, surf it, take a breath, and then, hey, look, this is what I know to be true. Right. And I think that's what when Wade was talking about suppressing it, I don't really know what he was talking about, so I'm not going to put words in his mouth. But there's no, it's there, man. You're feeling it. So the question is, what do you do after you take that breath?
And I shouldn't feel guilty about being sad at a wedding, right? It's nothing I can do about it. That's just the world. So that if you, it's the duality that you learn that you can stand with sadness and joy at the same time. Because the sadness is here. I mean,
Wade,
it's not going away.
say that again, because that's I call Wade the Socrates of the semis because he says shit like this, right? Say that again. You can stand with the duality of what?
Sadness and joy. It's I mean, it sounds weird, or maybe sound outside the realm, but when you do it, feel it. You just know it. Because the sadness is always there.
It's the fucking truth. It's the fucking truth, man. That's the way life is. And so the suicide of your son, you're gonna flush that. You're not gonna feel. That's not gonna. Is haunt the right word? Haunt. I don't want to use the word haunt, but that's not gonna linger over your life forever. Well, fuck yeah, it is.
It's
but
an
again,
ever-existing presence.
your authentic self, Wade, you know, if you were being your authentic self and you were holding space for your pain and doing all these fucking things that people talk about, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means. Is what you would supposed to be do when that emotion, what you were supposed to do when that emotion shows up. But again,
Yeah.
you can't control it. The only thing you can do is control your behavior on the backside, let your brain tell you what you know to be true, and continue to live a great life. But nobody says that shit, man. That's what,
But, you know, it's maybe
You
another
know what else
topic for
is?
another. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the other frustrating part of all this is the glib phrases people will throw out as if it's assigning a tiny little meaning to something to whatever the issue is. Such as, I know we haven't hit this one yet. This is an oldie but goodie. Everything happens for a reason. No, it certainly does not. But to say that kind of thing, to assign it a little tiny aphorism that you can put it into your mind and say, oh, yeah, I guess so, just takes you away from the hard work of grieving. And it's work that you have to go through that stuff. And it doesn't give you any understanding, any additional understanding as to what you're feeling at all. All it does is it's basically just telling you to shut up.
Yeah.
you,
That's another one of my soapboxes. From a
Yep.
theological perspective, it's such
Hmm.
damaging concepts if it's not
Right.
explained what that actually means.
Exactly.
and then when you pick that scab with somebody, right, as a Catholic, ultimately where it takes you is, well, it's a matter of faith. That means I don't really know what the fuck I'm talking about, and I just said that shit, and I can't defend it. So here you go. Here's the trump card, right? It comes down to faith. Shut up, then. Don't say that shit to people, and which is why you shouldn't say that stuff to people, because you know you don't know that that's true, and you don't know where
Don't
they are and all that, and all you do is making their grief worse.
Hmm.
don't tell someone it's part of God's plan that my son went upstairs and blew his face off with a shotgun. Don't tell someone it's God's plan that their children suffers through a horrible cancer and dies at 5 or 6 extreme pain, right? What the Bible says is that God will take any situation and work it for good. It doesn't say he causes everything. He's not up there with a master plan. Well, I'm going to bump this child off at 6. I'm going to bump him off at 20. And their family's just going to be great after that. My son, when it comes to suicide, my son had the divine right of free will. He had the choice. He made the wrong choice, but he had the choice. But it wasn't God's plan for him to blow his face off with a shotgun. That's the reality. Now, God can take whatever happens on the backside, in my opinion, and turn that to good. Juan saved lives after his death. I know of at least 2, right? Because of these discussions, right?
Mm.
That's the good that comes from the bad. But God did not foreordain Juan to kill him.
You know, when I went down this is my initial struggle in life with trauma was my family. And, you know, my parents went through a divorce, you know, when I was probably 19, 20. They never spoke again the rest of their lives. The little family I grew up in, they annihilated. And I was looking for an answer. And I was going to the University of San Diego, and I'm 3 units short of a minor in theology because all my electives were theology classes, looking for an answer to this. Why would God do this to my family? Because God obviously did that, right? And ultimately, a friend of mine by the name of Kevin McGarry, my roommate, Kevin's dad was one of the smartest men I've ever met in my life. He was an engineer, worked at Lockheed. I mean, we used to joke about pocket protector, right? Slide rule belt buckle, but it wasn't a joke with Jack McGarry. And he was like, people would write books, theological books. Jack would write them a dissertation and a critique about their book, right? So I don't know how he has Kevin McGarry, right? And Kevin's a bit of a mouth breather, but he's smart. He's a smart guy, and we're roommates in college. And coming home from Christmas, he says, "You need to read this book," and he gives me the book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And That book had a profound effect on my life. And what he said, essentially, the rabbi who writes it, Harold Kushner's son, develops that genetic disorder, or has that genetic disorder where you age very quickly. It starts with a P. I can never remember how to pronounce the word. And he dies at the age of, I think, 13 or 14. He's 4.5 feet tall. He's bald. He dies as a 90-year-old man. And he watches this. And all the people in the book, the people that his congregation, they begin to say the things to him that he said to them. God doesn't give you more than you can handle. There's a purpose in this and all that crap, right? And he not having it. This little boy didn't do anything to anybody to deserve something like this. And so the book takes you on a journey. And what it taught me was God is there for my strength and my inspiration. And he doesn't have a spreadsheet up there causing everything that happens in my life. And that was a great epiphany for me as a Catholic, because I thought it was like, if I cut somebody off on the 405 here in Southern California, that's why my car got keyed in the parking lot of Ralph's here. Okay. That's the karma, right, of life. Well, I mean, Rabbi Kushner in a book, he says, yeah, it's not like that. We're humans subject to the human condition. God is there for our strength and our inspiration. That's why people get sick. That's why, people like Hitler exist. That's why, Pol Pot and all these horrible things that have happened, that's not God's will or God's creation. That is man, and man's free will. But it was a foreign idea to me. And it allowed me peace, and I stopped blaming God for stuff. But until then, I mean, I don't want to say I turned my back on my religion, but when I would ask hard questions of my religion, I would get a bullshit answer. It just comes down to faith. Okay. And then the other thing people love to do is they a la carte phrases from scripture, and they take it completely out of context. There's no historical context or anything, and they drop it on you, and they're like, yeah, that comes from the Bible. I won't tell you what my response to that is, but it's not pleasant. Actually, what my response is, yeah, the Nazis used the Bible a lot. Okay. So that thing's a pretty pliant tool, right? I don't know where you got that quote, but if I researched it, I'd be curious to know that if it actually does apply based on a historical situation and whatever the writer was writing about. But, think about this. When we go through something traumatic, we're ignorant, we're more fragile, and we get this tsunami of shit thrown at us. And you can see why people just retreat inside themselves and say, look, I need to suck it up, and nobody's coming to my pity party. And it's in that isolation, that isolated place that people live. And that's why these discussions we have all seen are so important in the lives of people.
And to me, that's one of the reasons for it to have truth with love for people going through trauma or grief, because they've already been in the valley of the shadow of death. There's what are you going to say to me that hurts worse than these can full of ashes here? So be honest with me. And sometimes people try to shield people, especially in grief, try to shield people from memories. Don't do that. I'm dying to hear more stories about my son. Don't ever think, well, I don't want to bring that up because it might be sad. Bring it up. I want to hear it. I want to know the story. Don't try to shield people from the truth or from memories, especially memories.
I helped a girl whose father committed suicide, and she told me along those lines, sometimes I feel like I've lost my father twice. Once his suicide, but none of my friends want to talk about it, right? So like on Father's Day or and people talk about their dad, like nobody asked me about my dad. Nobody talks about my dad. So I feel like not only did I lose him physically, but I've lost him. I've lost the narrative of him in my life. So it's like I've lost him twice. And so, but again, people are afraid, right? They don't know what to say. And so they err on the side of caution and they don't say shit.
Yeah. And,
To me,
you know, I'm sorry, the ancients had the philosophy that a person was never truly fully gone until no one remembers. And there's truth in that.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, the other component that we dance around, but I don't think we've ever really started talking about is human beings aren't naturally stable creatures to begin with. We don't naturally stabilize towards discipline, truth, and morality any more than a complex engine that's not maintained naturally stabilizes to functioning perfectly. It just doesn't work that way because we'll drift towards self-interest, we'll drift towards laziness, we'll drift towards rationalization and status protection and whatever's emotionally convenient unless we force ourselves to develop the discipline to go after what is true and what is right. You don't drift into good physical fitness. You got to work at that. You don't drift into a great understanding of what emotional continence is. You've got to work at that. And I don't think that people understand that we were not born good creatures. We were born to be selfish little assholes. And you've got to work at it not to be that. And I just think that's an important thing to get up front because what we're talking about, as people will see as they get more and more into the program that Mac has set up, is it's work. It's work, and it's a lot of it is self discipline. A lot of it is emotional fitness through physical fitness. A lot of it requires you to be fiscally responsible. And there's nothing easy about that. That's not our natural path. Our natural path is to drift along and go, to wherever the tribe around us is going. And that's not the route that you can take out of the valley of the shadow of death. I just wanted to get that was my soapbox of the day right there. And a very small one, but all the same.
Very important one. Well, I'll tell you this. I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing about this that's intuitive. Okay.
Mm-mm.
What we do intuitively is we react to the emotion. So how does that manifest itself? We fake like we're okay because we're embarrassed and we don't want anybody else to know. We suck it up. We find a numbing agent and we isolate. That's how virtually everybody does it. Because this path that we're talking about, this path from trauma to joy, it's not intuitive. If it was, the data I showed you certainly wouldn't look like it, right? We would figure this shit out. Okay. And, and people would be much more successful at coping. Well, we're not because we're more
Mhm.
fragile and again, ignorant, literally just don't know. And that's why these discussions, I think we're all adamant about these discussions and how important they are. That'll do it. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. We certainly did. If you can't tell, we have a pretty good time doing it. Remember, the goal of all this is to expose you to these discussions that normally take place very privately and done in a way that, it's a normal discussion. Why? Because trauma is a normal event in life. We don't know that because when it happens to us, we think we're different and we're not. So that's what these discussions are designed to do. Remember always, man, there is a path from trauma to joy. It's inside of you. You can do this. If all these people I've seen do it can do it, you can do it too. Okay? Don't ever forget that. Right? Also, like, share, and subscribe to these things so the people around you see what you're doing. And I guarantee you, many of them are struggling. You don't know that because they're not saying anything to you. And maybe by you watching it, they'll watch it, and then maybe they'll make a comment to you about it. And that's a door opening so that you maybe get to change somebody's life, maybe save somebody's life. And that's what this is all about. Us becoming stronger, us becoming wiser, and then us in a position to help ourselves and help the people around us. So thanks for watching on behalf of Tim, Wade, and myself, right? And as always, any questions or comments, you can send them via the platform you're watching on, or you can just send an email to mac@fromtrauma2joy.com. So episodes drop every Monday and Thursday, and we hope you keep watching. Have a great day.